Namaste and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our continuing series, Evenings with Sraddhalu. Namaste.
Namaste and greetings to all.
We are happy to continue our series. Today, same on the current affairs, and we will have a special focus on the events that are happening in the US. And we will start with one comment that we received from Eric. Sharing a link about duplicity. The recent interview between journalist Caroline Glick and attorney Eugene Kontorovich is quite extraordinary in exposing duplicity by the current American president and State Department as well as the UN. I thought to share this with you in light of the most interesting recent videos on the current affairs. Thank you again for enlightening insights about the unfolding worldly events.
So this link which he has sent, we have put now on the description list. There are quite a few links, more than 20, maybe 28 links. But this is one of the important ones that I would highly recommend for people who want to understand the cabal operations as regards Israel-Palestine conflict and the pressure put on Israel particularly. It will give you an insight into how the media internationally is lying and world leaders are playing a very dangerous game. We can continue with the question.
Asking a question about sincerity. While watching videos with various leaders on the world scene, I am struck by the depth of insincerity that is embodied. For instance, Kamala Harris, Antony Blinken, Justin Trudeau, Yuval Noah Harari, and others appears to be perpetually insincere and appear to lack a consciousness. And for individuals such as these and others of their ilk, is it possible that there is not a psychic being in the physical body, or perhaps that the psychic being is very undeveloped and it is roughly veiled? As has happened in the past with Hitler and Stalin, are there humans on Earth today who are channels or the incarnations of vital beings? Modern psychological terms such as sociopath and psychopath appear to apply to the aforementioned people and others like them. Yet, these terms are at best descriptions but not explanations of the actual phenomena. I've included a few quotes below about this, and in the particular, the one below by Sri Aurobindo I have found very helpful to understand what transpired during the COVID crisis and why much of the intellectually driven humanity was and is perplexed by the destruction of our civilization structures and norms. I would be grateful if you could shed on some lights, please. Thank you.
Okay. The question is longish, but in the very question, Eric has covered some very important points. And so I will elaborate on each of these as we go along. He has also provided several links, some of which I have shared in the description box, particularly links by Yuval Harari, who is the official, let's say, philosopher for the World Economic Forum, and describes their vision of the global one world government. And I will read from some of those quotes, though you must read the link, see the links and hear it for yourself to really see the scope of what happens in their thinking. First of all, I want to look at the points in the question itself, where he says, he's struck by the depth of insincerity, and he gives a list of leaders who appear to be perpetually insincere and appear to lack a conscience. This is something which you find generally, and it's a common statement around the world. Politicians seem to fit this description perfectly. The exceptions are very few. I remember when in 2016 Donald Trump appeared on the scene. At that time I had unfortunately missed the early stages of the debates because I looked at the whole game as so rigged that it didn't matter who came. But it's only when the media violently turned against Trump that I realized there was something different here. I remember at that point, many of my friends in the United States, almost all of them would be Democrats or voting Democrats at that time at least. They came out with this observation that one of the reasons why Trump was popular with his followers was that he spoke things the way they were, that he touched their hearts, he seemed to be sincere in what he spoke, and that's what made all the difference, although they were still against him for other reasons. And I remember that as an interesting observation because one rarely finds people commenting thus about politicians generally, international businessmen, particularly international bankers, but let's put generally that category, and film stars, and anybody who has a major following or reputation to protect, generally speaking. And this would include performers, film stars, and a lot. So this pattern we see common. And you have to recognize that these cover basically the power centers, financial centers, and influence centers. All of the three seem to be somehow insincere. And depth of insincerity is the observation we see. They seem almost to lack a conscience. So then comes Eric's question, is it possible that there is not a psychic being in the physical body, or that the psychic being is undeveloped or thoroughly veiled, as happened in the past? With Hitler, Stalin, etc., are there humans on earth who are channels or incarnations of vital beings? So the simple answer to all this would be yes. All the time throughout history, just as the divine puts out emanations, the anti-divine forces also put out their emanations. But even then, emanations are minor. More often than not, they have alignments with people who share similar interests or priorities as those forces, and it builds alignments, and so there's an emanation as if of an energy, but not necessarily a full incarnation. In time that may enter and possess, which is the case with Hitler, and we will go to the quotation from Sri Aurobindo about this. But this is the case going back centuries, will be the case going forward for centuries perhaps also, until the mass of humanity outgrows the alignment with these anti-divine interests. When the mass of humanity lines primarily with the divine consciousness, and it doesn't mean you have to be perfect, it doesn't mean you have to be absolutely pure, it's just the central alignment of your being to be more with that. And until that happens on a majority in humanity, you will always have this duality of extremes of interests and influences. And so effectively on the ground level among human beings there is a battle, and the battle here reflects or represents the battle there which is of a spiritual or occult nature, and we become as if tools, mostly unconscious, sometimes conscious. And when we reach to Aurobindo's text we will understand this more deeply. But the general answer is yes, it's always been so. So what's special now? What is special today is that, today being in the last 100 years, there has been an enormous descent of, and I hate to use the word descent, but vital forces, beings, energies. And descent because the physical plane is below the vital. So it's not that a descent is always a spiritual. It can also be from an intermediate domains, because from a physical consciousness all those are above, so to say. In terms of consciousness, of course, as mental beings, a vital would be an inferior grade. Nevertheless, as a plane, it is not in the physical, and therefore we can still speak of a descent of these influences. But the reason for this, Sri Aurobindo explains, from the point where the supramental consciousness has begun to, so to say, press down, and this was in the 1930s even, that pressure building from above down creates a pressure across all the worlds. And particularly at the levels closer to the physical, there is an enormous pressure of the light and force of the supramental consciousness, which will as if compel you to either align with a higher truth or perish in its intensity. So, two things happen at that point. These intermediate beings either feel the pressure from above and so move lower down in their working, where the light is not so strong and they can hide in the darkness, or they attempt to intervene in human affairs to block the entry of the higher light. And so there is an urgency in their action, because it seems as if the end of their rule is imminent, at least in earthly affairs. And imminent can still be a few centuries away, but still, if you compare it with a few million years or a few billion years, that's imminent. So there is this pressure where they look for channels, points of incarnation. And again, going back for many centuries, they have attempted to organize for a very long time the increasing numbers of their followers or influenced mediums among humanity. So again, it's not something new. But what is new is that the nature of that organization today has suddenly and dramatically increased for reasons which we have to see are related to the current unification of the world as well as the technological means that allows mass control. We have spoken about this in great detail at the very first 4 or 5 sessions of our theme of current affairs. And I would still encourage those who have not seen those to please go and look at those first 4 or 5, where I spoke about how these forces build influences going across centuries. They plan ahead, centuries ahead. And just as the divine vision also sees centuries ahead, these forces also plan, and it's a strategic game going back centuries before that, of which we see the outcome today. So human beings tend to think in terms of very short term, at the most human lifetime. You don't look beyond your own lifetime. Very few are those who think a little further and maybe think of what happens 100, 200 or 1,000 years hence. But the moment you become a little more conscious of your deeper spiritual psychic immortality, that becomes natural. Because you know you've been for so many thousand years, you know you will be for so many, well, unendingly, but still at least for the next few thousand years, you will have an active role to play. And you don't think only in terms of a narrow lifetime. But the reality of the mass of humanity is that we have also been programmed to think in narrower and narrower terms, to the extent that our economies are driven by quarterly results, but also our thinking as individuals, and I will use the word now consciously, puppets of the Cabal play, of the Cabal hypnosis operation, of the MK Ultra operation. As puppets, we have been programmed to think in terms of just the next day. You think a little beyond only because, well, you have to plan your work schedules. But in terms of priorities, in terms of what is happening around you, we are often lost in the immediacy of today and at best think a little bit of the next. Because, well, tomorrow I have to face it. And that's about it. This has been done through our educational system, and we have to be conscious that this has been deliberately programmed. Go back barely 100 years ago, 200 years ago, you don't even have to go much further than 100 years. You will find, at least in India and most of the old cultures, you would think in terms of the next 7 generations. Even today, if you are religiously, ritualistically minded, you have a ritual that takes place every year, where you look back at your ancestors and offer them thanks or worship, and going back 7 generations. So this idea of 7 generations before and 7 generations hence is rooted in the old cultures. Even in the Native American traditions, they speak of 7 generations. I believe even in Europe, if you go back maybe a few more 100 years, you will find similar ideas did prevail until they were wiped out by the modernism and the age of intellectualism and reason. But with that came a very hard physical turn, which also was programmed. So all this is to set a base for the discussion here, where we understand there is a large game plan, and we discussed in the first 4 or 5 sessions how they have organized through secret societies often for turning human beings into useful instruments. Sometimes consciously so that they may gain powers or benefits, sometimes unconsciously simply by the lifestyle. I've given examples of how young people are programmed to listen to Cabal music, satanic music, participate in activities in which they are asked to subject their mind to the vital impulses, rather than, which is the training of the yoga, to rise above the desire impulse and find a greater freedom in the mind, and then to open to something still higher, into a spiritual freedom. You're told actively to subject your mind and will to the vital desire and drive of the moment. And you see how, I remember when my teacher MP Pandit came back from the US, he recalled one meeting particularly where there was in a spiritual group, and I don't remember which one, there was a man who was presenting how the young people today, meaning in the 1980s, were being taught to swing their hips with music, and which, okay, you can dance, but the way they were asked to do, the entire focus of the concentration and consciousness shifted from head to the waist, and particularly with the sexual impulses. And in that movement, you will see those who dance with that, the center of the dance energy is there. And with that, he was demonstrating, and Panditji pointed out what the demonstration was. You lose the mind and embed yourself in the desire impulse, and often very crude and coarse desires. That programming came very strongly. And when you see people drinking alcohol, taking drugs, and then going into those kinds of dances, you have the total inebriation and loss of all the higher faculties, dulling of the surface, frontal, prefrontal cortex, etc., and settling into your reptilian brain, instinct-driven animal humanity. Why is this so important? Because when you live by that, you are entirely predictable, manipulatable, and programmable. The moment you come to the front part of your mind, brain, you start questioning. You see through the programming, and you are not easy to program. So pushing humanity gradually into that condition where this is the norm is a regression of evolution, but by which now all these, controls can operate on you, and we will look at some of that, but also these lower vital beings can then influence you because you are now a victim of your impulsiveness. I remember one of these persons who had gone into the secret Cabal meeting of the Bohemian Grove. He came out with this observation that when he was walking around, people told him, "Why are you doing this? Let go and allow the impulses to take over." That's the nature of those parties, where the impulse dominates and you deliberately subject yourself to the impulsiveness. Of what? Where is the impulse coming from? Now, if humanity was only physical, then the impulse comes from your own desires, and if you believed in Freud, they would come from your own animal nature. Except that's not true. There are other worlds, and actually those worlds tap into you on those levels and drive your impulses. And that's how you become a puppet to those vital beings. So understand that there is a whole operation to turn humanity, and starting with young people. This is extremely important to understand. It's not helpful to hack a human being who's already trained to think, because then it's going to take time. Ensure they are not trained to think from childhood. Ensure they're trained to follow subjective impulsiveness from childhood, and make that the norm. Make them criticize and laugh at those who think and question. Let this become the in thing that they have to now follow, because following is their way. And you have built a humanity that is completely programmable. And this, in the long run, is the agenda of the Cabal operations, it's the agenda of the Asuric forces and all the vital beings and so on. So, coming back to Eric's question, as happened in the past with Hitler and Stalin, are there human beings on earth today who are channels and are incarnations of vital beings? Yes, of course. But far more now is the mass of humanity which has been trained to become channels or open to vital energies or beings and become their agents unconsciously, perhaps in the moment, nevertheless. As a consequence is the loss of the psychic influence and the gradually covering up of that influence, because the hard, coarse impulses on the surface now tend to dominate. So even if the psychic being was sufficiently conscious or awake, it is now struggling. If that covering has been done soon enough, early enough, hard enough, painfully enough, then the psychic being has no hope. And you have then what appears to be a shell of a human being. How do they do that? By putting children through trauma of various kinds. And that particularly includes sexualizing them and sexual abuse at an early age. So I've put a whole lot of links about this. We had spoken about it in the first 5 sessions of our discussion on the theme of current affairs, going back a few months ago. But at that time I had not got into the habit of putting links. I had mentioned things. I was wary of whether we would get censored even to speak of those things. But since then I've been putting links more liberally. So links which I couldn't put then, which I've put them now, do take a look at some of this. And I think you will be sufficiently shocked at how far this operation has gone. You will find links of children who have been groomed to be sexualized at the ages of 4, 5, 6. And it's heart-rending to see how perverse it is. But this is part of that agenda, to cut across the psychic influence as early as possible, before the mind and even before the vital form, so that as they form, they cut, cover, block completely. There are other tools used in the modern education to turn children entirely extroverted, to not allow them time to be alone, to daydream, to turn within and explore their own subjective realms, which might lead to something deeper because they are naturally more sensitive to the soul influence in the early years. So very early on, this hard turn is made. And Sri Aurobindo refers to this as one of the biggest problems for the sadhakas, that even though the soul may have built a prior psychic life in its evolution and comes with it, this hard outward turn of the vital nature and the mind by education becomes its greatest barrier. And this is one of the very sad things you see in almost all the young children. Sometimes you see a clear, strong psychic influence, but they're not conscious because they've been trained to turn only outward and not trust what they feel deeper within. And then later, once that hard turn has been made, they're made to turn into a kind of a subjective, sentimental, emotional belief system, and which then drives them. Eric continues, modern psychological terms such as sociopath and psychopath appear to apply to these types of people. But it's not an explanation. And so I'm trying to give an explanation here of how you're actually turned into a sociopath or a psychopath, not realizing that it's being done to you. Upon this is a program currently of giving children medicines and psychiatric medicines at an early age, which are supposed to enhance their attention span or focus, but actually make them zombies, dull their sensitivity, and just make them thinking animals. And this is being done through medication. I remember reading once a text which was from the founder of the name slips my mind, founder of the Waldorf School of Education. So in one of his texts, the name will come back, one of his texts, he wrote how through vaccination they would find a way eventually to block out the soul itself. And on reading that, at first I thought, it sounds a bit like an exaggeration. But thinking deeper, it seemed as if it might just be possible. Yes, Rudolf Steiner, and he had some amazing insights, very closely paralleling many of Sri Aurobindo's teachings. The limitation was there was a certain reductionism, and mother refers to him as an asuric formation also. But the important thing is, he foresaw this and actually said that they would remove the soul. And it seemed somewhat an exaggeration, but if you think about it deeply, nature has taken centuries, millennia, to lift us from the crude, barbaric ape human into a sophisticated, thinking, refined, civilized thinking human, with many stages in between and many oscillations even. The soul was always there. Mature or immature is irrelevant. Its ability to act on the surface required a certain refinement of the external consciousness. If that is coarsened, then effectively you would have blocked out the soul's influence, and that is not so far off in the imagination, and not quite impossible. And it could be done through vaccines also, or other drugs. In this case, much more obviously, you don't have to go all the way to the vaccines, but the psychotropic drugs or the psychiatric drugs which are given, as a result of which there is this dulling of the consciousness. And so the result practically is that a mass of humanity today is being bred and raised to become natural and easy vehicles for these vital influences. So this is the big difference I'm pointing to, and we are way beyond what happened during the time of Hitler or Stalin. The things are far more complex and I would even say disturbing. So Eric then says he has sent a link from Sri Aurobindo, so I'm going to take this up, but also he's given a few links from Yuval Harari. I want to read from a portion of this because he says this. In the past, many governments wanted to, control the masses. But nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it. But soon at least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people. Now when he's saying this, you should know it's already been done. It's being done right now. And then he says, we humans should get used to the idea that we are no longer mysterious souls. We are now hackable animals. That's what we are. Hackable animals. Now look at the vocabulary. We are not thinking animals. We are hackable animals. See, already being a thinking animal is superior to our animal nature, and then that is still without the psychic. Bring back the psychic, that's when you become human. You remove the psychic, Sri Aurobindo says we are thinking animals. But now imagine even the thinking capacity reduced so that you're a hackable animal. Now you're a puppet of the machinery. And then he says it can be put to good use for healthcare. That's not at all true. But then he says, and you see, this is the way the wording is done. You take something which is true, you flip it, and the truth now presented with flipped, inverted values actually is a falsehood, but the truth component of it is highlighted, and the falsehood pushed to you as a truth. That's why I've titled today's theme Inverted Values. So he says, if this power falls into the hands of 21st century Stalin, the results will be the worst totalitarian regime in human history. And we already have a number of applicants for the job of 21st century Stalin. There's another quotation from Yuval Harari. He says, we need to reinvent democracy for this new era in which human beings are now hackable animals. So a new era. Everyone recognizes something has changed. We are in a new age of some kind. But what is that age and what is it about? What are its values? And instead of looking at the spiritual values towards which the age is turning, you catch something, flip it, invert it, and now because there's an element of truth, you think, yes, it makes sense, but it's made into a falsehood, and now you chase the falsehood. So, democracy, oh yes, it's a great thing, isn't it? Except you know what democracy finally is. Finally, if you hack the masses, democracy is pointless. It is only concealed totalitarian regime, isn't it? And then he says, you know, the whole idea that humans have, that they have the soul or spirit, that they have free will, and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will. That is over, Yuval Harari says. We need to come to terms with the fact that no, but again, this is what philosophy meets computer science and biology. So come to the terms with the fact that you're a hackable animal and you have to accept that you will be hacked, and so you need to reinvent democracy, which means what? Democracy is driven by the hacked people. What does it mean? Democracy is a sham, and yet you praise the democracy. You see how it works. The Chinese Communist Party calls itself a democracy. You see how it works? The inversion of values. So this is an example of a quotation from Yuval Harari, and there's a quotation now from Sri Aurobindo which we will look at in some detail, because that will explain many more things. This is from the evening talks of Sri Aurobindo, and as you know, in those days when Sri Aurobindo would sit with them, because he was recovering from illness, otherwise he was not meeting people so easily. For that purpose, initially it was the doctors, then a few, and then they had tea with him. So several of these sadhakas who were living in the ashram main building would gather around, in particular Nirodbaran and Purani. These two particularly, going back, noted what they could recall. And it's interesting, there are elements in their notation which overlap almost exactly, and then there are aspects which are totally different, because their interests were different, they retained what was interesting to them. And generally Purani had a far more powerful intellect and memory, so those are more precisely accurate and more technical in their content. Nirodbaran's was more generic and more political. So I'm going to read from these. This is also link which, part of the portion that Eric shared, but it will help us to understand what is happening behind the scenes. And you must understand the difference now is there is not just Hitler, there are many Hitler types, agents all over the world, and many of them have been groomed and prepared the way Hitler was, but now it's been done by a different mechanism, and many more of the followers who are open to that. So this is from 1940, 20th May, evening talks. Purani. This is from Nirodbaran's notes. Purani. Hitler's declaration that before August 15th, the war has to be finished and peace agreed upon seems significant. So Hitler had this obsession with 15th August. Sri Aurobindo. That is the sign that he is the enemy of our work. And from the values concerned in the conflict, it should be quite clear that what is behind him is the Asuric, the Titanic power. Purani. It is strange how he takes his decisions. Sri Aurobindo. It is not he who takes the decisions. The being behind him decides. Purani. It knows perhaps that August 15th being your birthday, there is going to be some descent of the divine on that date. Sri Aurobindo. I don't think it believes in any such descent. It would say, I must make some decisive movement before anything decisive happens on that date. This being comes here from time to time and sees what kind of work is going on. Comes here being meaning coming to the ashram. And of course it had its own emanations. 1940 it was not so, but very soon after many came who were also emanations of that being and other Asuric beings. Mother accepted them in order to attempt to change them, convert them. Some she successfully did, some partially, some not at all. But just to show you that this became a hotbed, a battleground literally, of even representatives of the Asuric forces. Nirodbaran. It doesn't believe in any descent of the divine, Sri Aurobindo. It believes in its own descent and is too self-confident about it. Nirodbaran. But surely it knows that the work here is against its own interests. Sri Aurobindo, laughing, of course. Purani. Is it only one being or a troop? Sri Aurobindo. There are more than one. But this is a very powerful being. So this was the Lord of Falsehood, what Mother has called the Lord of Falsehood. And then Sri Aurobindo says, have you read Paul Richard's Lord of the Nations? Purani. No. Sri Aurobindo. I believe it was not published. He was in communion with this being. So Paul Richard, whom mother married at that time, the circumstances you know, she recognized he was an emanation of that Asura. She tried to convert the Asura by the contact she would have through the marriage. She suffered a lot eventually, even at several times she would have died. He attacked her physically to kill her. Sri Aurobindo. He was in communion with this being, and the plans and methods he has written of in the book are the same as those carried out now. Now here's a good example. On a human level, Paul Richard was a brilliant philosopher, intellect. He could spew philosophy, speak with all the right words and terms, present them with great rationality, argue out, etc. But he was in communion with the Asuric being, knew the plans and methods, and his thoughts were a reflection of the plans and methods of the Asura. Now, I won't name them, but the people you see on the World Economic Forum and their representatives or others who speak similarly, you have to understand where this kind of thinking and articulation comes from. Now, some of them have been programmed to think like that from childhood, through their education, through whatever indoctrination. But in most cases, eventually, they are so plugged into the energy and the thought of those beings that that being's thinking is reflected in their thinking, and they cannot see through. So, Sri Aurobindo continues. He said meaning now, the being through Paul Richard or through his writing. He said there that the present civilization was to be destroyed. But really, it is the destruction of the whole human civilization that is aimed at, and already in Germany, Hitler has done it. There is no civilization left there. It's quite a statement. What reigns there is barbarism supported by science. Science meaning physical science. And Hitler has destroyed human civilization wherever he has gone, as in Poland. Now you have to understand the full import of this. You remember the mother once said that she took birth in France because it was the highest focal point of European civilization. You have to see what has happened today in the younger generation, across Europe, across the United States generally, but look at the decline of values and standards, the dulling of the mind, intellect, and all higher values have been practically forgotten, and only the crude, coarse, ugly, and impulsive, desire-driven animal living is largely in the mass. Barbarism supported by science. And Hitler has destroyed human civilization wherever he has gone. He gives a good example of Poland, and you see Poland of today is a pale shadow of what was before. France is a pale shadow of what was before. UK, Great Britain, you have to see what a mess it has become. And everywhere where there is this decline, you see one common feature. With it came a loss of the higher values that were protected by religions. So in the hard turn away from religion, which obviously had a positive point to it, also was lost some of the refinements which were protected by the religions. So, next point, Purani. Christianity and all religion seems to be his targets. Sri Aurobindo, yes. What he may want is Ludendorff's religion, the Norse religion of a primitive type, where primitive instincts are worshipped. If you look up Ludendorff, he wanted Germany to take over the whole of Europe. He was a pagan worshipper of the Nordic god Wotan. I'm picking this from Wikipedia. He detested not only Judaism but also Christianity, which he regarded as a weakening force. So this Nordic god Wotan or Odin, what is this about? And if you look at some of the recent upsurge of serials which highlight some of those spaces and the history of those spaces, you get some idea of it. Of course, they are presented as something very developed sometimes, but occasionally you see the crudeness. It included, incidentally, human sacrifice of various kinds. And the entire thinking was that the gods decide everything, and we are merely puppets for the gods, and nothing can happen if the gods don't sanction it, or the gods can take away or give. And very crude, primitive ideas. But that kind of thinking was at the basis. So, all based on primitive instincts. Purani. Do these beings recognize that there are higher divine powers? Sri Aurobindo. It depends on the type of being. For example, some know that there are gods, but they won't admit that they are greater than themselves. Interesting idea. So for the Asuric beings, depending on the type, oh yeah, they are gods, but they are inferior. I will dominate them. That's the thinking. Purani. The fight between the Devas and Asuras is graphically described in the Puranas. Just as the Asuras are against the human race, there must be other beings who help the human race. Sri Aurobindo. Yes. Human beings by themselves are no match for the Asuras. It is only an influence from the Asura or other beings. If it is only an influence from the Asuras or other beings, the result may depend on that influence. Here in Hitler's case, it is not merely an influence but a possession, even perhaps an incarnation. Now, incarnation doesn't mean it has to be from birth. It can be a partial possession and then a complete seizing, in which case you can even say the being now incarnates. Halfway through the life of the human, the Asuric being incarnates, now taking full possession and driving out obviously the psychic being, pushing it out. It may withdraw totally or remain at the back subdued. The case of Stalin is similar. The vital world has descended upon the physical. Now he's saying it's not just a few beings, the entire vital world has come down. That is why the intellectuals are perplexed at the destruction of their civilization, of all the values they had made and stood for. They deny the existence of the worlds beyond the physical, so they are bound to be perplexed. Interesting idea. You see, the intellectuals, because they said, oh, we are a product of our biology and we have reached such a great civilization. Of course, they're standing on the strength of their prior ancestors. And now with science, we will amplify this and make it perfect, except it goes in the very opposite direction. And they don't understand. Because they think this is all. They don't see that there are other forces which have entered and seized and turned things. So, a comment from Sri Aurobindo. France is calling back her past to defend her present. Weygand and Weygand and Pétain have been called, haven't they? Purani, yes, it seems there are other military geniuses who are not getting an opportunity because of a religious bar or some such factor. Sri Aurobindo, religious bar? Purani, they may happen to be Roman Catholics. Now observe Sri Aurobindo's knowledge and the precision and detail of his knowledge. Sri Aurobindo. But Weygand and Pétain are Catholics. Foch was an ardent Catholic. Nevinson, during the last war, wrote strongly against a general who was a freethinker and who had made a mess. If there were any genius about today, Weygand should know. You see, he knows each of these major players and what they have done, their beliefs, their thought, their direction of turn of nature, etc. It's amazing. Satyendra, the Germans have made a great advance in the last 24 hours. Sri Aurobindo, yes, a rapid advance. Purani, they have brought in a new kind of armored tank which seems very formidable. Again, we get a glimpse of Sri Aurobindo. I'm reading, it's not relevant to our context, but you get an idea of Sri Aurobindo's understanding. Sri Aurobindo, the French anti-tank guns were not effective. So now they have brought up heavy 75mm guns. It is because of these tanks that the French were thrown off balance. Naturally, if thousands of tanks push forward, the infantry can't do anything unless they're supported by strong mechanical weapons. The British Army seems to rely on their Air Force, but the Air Force can't decide a war. It can only harass the enemy. The mother says that the RAF bombers can only act at night, while the German bombers operate only during the day. Look at the minuteness with which they are following the war. Some of their information is, of course, coming by other means, but it is interesting observations because what he's describing about the war, and I'm bringing this into today's context, replace heavy 75mm tanks by advanced AI. replace thousands of tanks pushing forward by social media accounts and social media platforms which are being pushed upon you, through which data, information, and mental programming is happening for the battle for your mind. And you find an exact transfer of that situation today. Interesting. Now we look at the same date, A.B. Purani's notes, and it's some things overlap, but there's some new elements. So I'll skip portions where he says that 15th August, he speaks about that. Disciple, does the Asura fear that a descent might take place on 15th August, it being your birthday, which will make his work more difficult? Sri Aurobindo, this being does not believe in a divine descent. It is a sort of challenge. I will finish my first decisive victory before August 15th. That shows the nature of the conflict. So again, there's the reference to the Paul Richard, etc. He said that the present civilization is to be destroyed, but really it is the destruction of the whole human civilization that is aimed at. And so you must understand, the mission of Hitler is not over, it's been transferred to other individuals, the same forces working behind now through different agents. Already in Germany, Hitler has done it. There is no civilization left there. What reigns there is barbarism supported by science. And today we could extend the statement to everywhere in the world practically, with a few pockets of civilization. But largely, wherever you find strong Hollywood influence or the Western model of democracy largely imposed by whatever means, or any autocratic system which has been imposed, which comes from the need to control, it has crushed the refinements. And disciple, most of the people do not believe in any religion. They seem to want to destroy Christianity and all religion. Sri Aurobindo, that is what I meant when I said these Germans have preserved the barbarian in them. What they have got is scientific knowledge, mechanical skill, but all the cultural activities that used to be there are suppressed. And Hitler suppresses them wherever he goes. He has done it in Poland and in Czechoslovakia. Disciple, man is only used by the Germans as a part of their machinery and organization. Sri Aurobindo, exactly so. Now again, I am transplanting this description and this conversation to present. The reduction of the human mind, the reduction of the human heart, its refinement, its culture, its civilizational values to machinery and organization, the hackable animal, as Yuval Harari described it. No soul, no God, no freedom of will, hacked animal, part of their machinery and organization. You see exactly the same wording, the same circumstances, only now massively, globally impacting every child from the point they start picking up a phone or a tablet and starting to interact on social media is seized. No tanks, replace tanks by mobile phones and tablets, and you have the same situation. I'm skipping the portion about the Norse gods, etc. So he again you find the same idea repeated here, that the Asuras are so powerful, as a human being you have nothing, you cannot stand against them. They're massive, they are even cosmic, in some of them are cosmic in their operation, and only a divine consciousness, a divine being can act against them, or on a material level their influenced agents will have to be countered by an influence from the divine side, and an agent of a human being who is an agent of the divine. And so the last paragraph, Sri Aurobindo, it is only the intervention of the divine that can become effective. For in this Hitler and Stalin affair, it is the descent of the whole vital world on this earth. That is what has puzzled most people, especially the intellectuals who were thinking in terms of idealism. They never expected such a thing, and now when it has come, they don't understand how it has come and what is to be done. They deny the existence of the worlds beyond the physical, and so they are bound to be perplexed. And so again we are reminded that finally it is a spiritual battle, and the more of humanity that turns to the spiritual light, the more likely that this situation can be reversed. And that's why our priority. So I'm leaving this text now. There is also a link I have put of Ronald Bernard. I had spoken of him. I had perhaps put one link at that time, but I put his entire YouTube channel. There are 5 or 6 lectures, maybe more later. Some of them have been dubbed in English, and I would highly encourage for all of you to watch all 5. I think there are 5 which are in a sequence, in a series. Please watch all 5. You will have an understanding of what is happening behind the scenes in the higher elite of the power structures, and particularly the financial world, and what happens there, and the extent to which they have satanic practices and perversions, and how they look upon children and play on the children and sometimes abuse them, sell them for organs, torture them, kill them, etc., sacrifice them, and the like. And there's a whole organized industry for this, so that the souls are thrown out of the bodies even while they are most vulnerable, and the humanity which survives is perverted beyond recognition. But one of the points he makes, that this, so to say, as an elite, are very small in number who control everything behind the scenes. If we wake up, they can do nothing. Even their agents, who are trapped sometimes because of blackmail or other means, they want to be free. Some of them quit the game by suicide. But they are waiting for the common people to wake up to be able to act and take sides and free themselves from the trap they have fallen into. So it all comes back to this: can humanity sufficiently awaken before there is an irreversible decline? And this is the question before us today, for which all of us have a place to play, a role to play. So I've put Ronald Bernard's videos. For those who have not seen, please do watch at least those 5, and you will see them. They're dubbed in English, also subtitled in English. So pick what is convenient. I found the dubbed version easier because I could play it at double speed and still listen. But this idea that you can hack, taken to its logical conclusion, means hack them young, so that you don't have to overcome a positive awakening and push back. If you hack them young enough, they are perverted from childhood. They don't know better. And so about this, I have put several links. I would like you to see that. And the sexualization of children are some of those links I have put, and some of those are very disturbing. But please do see, because otherwise you will not understand how serious the situation is and what the elite that rules today stands for, and what those who fight them stand for. Both Trump and Vladimir Putin have come out very strongly against this satanic agenda and have worked actively to stop the human trafficking and trade, particularly of children, and of course other women, adults, but of children particularly. Trump passed severe laws. It was on 21st of December. I don't remember now which year, but the date was significant. 2019 perhaps. A year before he demitted office, that he passed very strict laws, maybe 2 years before, very strict laws that the government could seize all properties of anyone caught in child trafficking. Now, this was unusual, it was new. Why was it done, and what were the consequences of it? Some of the consequences have been perhaps secretly exercised, but others may be exercised if he can come back. That is to be seen. But there's one link which I had mentioned in the past, but I've put the link for it. It is in a New York City Pride March. Now again, I want to point out the inversion of values. Look at the word pride. What does it mean today? Pride means you're proud of something great that you have done, isn't it? What does it mean today? It is the word used for, and they will say, gay pride. You are proud that you have sex with other men. What is there to be proud about? What did you achieve? What have you done? Nothing. So why the word pride? Logically, it has no meaning. And yet, a superior term and a truth that you would want, everyone would like to be proud of something they have done, that they have achieved, because they have overcome something. That word is taken, warped and plugged in and made into something, a falsehood made a truth, as if presented. So Gay Pride March, Gay Pride Month, and you have an entire month, but you have one day for pride or respect for your nation and for those who sacrifice their lives so that your country could be free. You have one day for that. And an entire month for what? So that you can have sex with the same gender. What's there to be proud about? Okay, you have sex if you want, that's not the point. But why use the word pride? Why seize upon a rainbow? Again, rainbow used to be an image of something beautiful. It's the promise of the sun and a rain and nourishment of all of nature, because it's raining and there is sunlight. So you have the best of both. You don't have dark clouds. You don't have rainbow when you have dark clouds. So you have that perfect combination, and an idyllic scene you would have as children in your children's textbooks, where a rainbow in the sky and you jumped, you had songs about rainbow, except now the word is turned into, or the image, the rainbow colors has been reduced to sex with various kinds of different preferences or types. It's about sex. Again, you may be free to do what you like, but seizing upon the rainbow as an image is an inversion of a truth or a beautiful image into something which is actually has zero value other than base animal instincts. That's all it is, isn't it? So the inversion of values you will find as the hallmark of the cabal agenda today, and particularly in its actions through the media, through the social platforms, and through education, cinema, of course. But what is interesting is, so I've put a video there where these people are moving, openly singing together, shouting in their Gay Pride March, as it's called. We are here, we are queer, we are coming for your children. Now, until people see this, they do not believe that this is an agenda. We are coming for your children. Please watch the video and please be shocked. Please be disturbed. Please panic. Because this is an organized agenda the media is not telling you about, but which is being done actively through textbooks for children. It has come into India also. And what is interesting is, if you don't support that Pride Month, you're a homophobe. No, this has nothing to do with homophobia. It has to do with the recognition that these symbols have been warped and perverted to something which they do not have, which have no connection with, and which belong only to a very base, crude, human instinctive value system. Have nothing to do with the higher values that those words were associated with. Even the word gay. I remember when I was a student, you read textbooks where this young man was gay and happy. Happy and gay were words put together. Happy and gay today would mean he has sex with men. Why should gay as a state of happiness be associated with having sex with men? There's no connection. But it's one of those words appropriated. And it's got so appropriated that the word gay now cannot be used in its original sense of being happy. It's very strange. There is another article I've put a link to, and it's titled Injustice, How the Sex Offender Registry Destroys LGBT Rights. That means somebody who is, let's say, has some different sexual orientation. And again, I'm not criticizing that. It's a choice you make. You live by your values, no problem. But when you live by that, and you have an offense which is illegal, you have applied yourself sexually on children, molested a child, then these people are put on a sex offender registry and they're tracked by the government, in the US at least. And so this article is about how that destroys their right to do what they want to do. Now again, here I'm pointing to this as the inversion of values. Human rights were something was respected. Right to do what? Well, right to be free, right to speak freely, right to do what is good, etc., right to grow, to evolve. That's the goal of rights and freedom, so that you can grow. You take that right and warp it, and your right to abuse somebody, a child, sexually. You see how it becomes distorted. And that's a human right, now presented at least like this. So it's a warping again, inversion of values. And surely there is no right for that. There is no right to harm another in any way. Except they will say that's not harming. We don't want to get into that argument. What is interesting also, there are people who stand for these rights, for various, in thing today. Notice how today nobody is speaking about Ukraine and Ukrainian people and Ukraine's battle against Russia, etc. That whole thing is forgotten. You have today instead Palestine, which is the in thing, or maybe that will be replaced by something else, according to how the media plays you. Nobody even thinks about Ukraine because the media has stopped talking about it. You see how easily we are hackable as a mass. But in the Palestine rally, there's a pro-Palestine rally, there's a video and I've put that in the links, where a queer for Palestine representative comes with his rainbow flag. And as he's standing for Palestinians, there's a Palestinian woman who comes and starts abusing him, asking him to get out because he's gay. So here are the people for whom you are standing, who are rabidly against you. In many of the Islamic countries, according to law, if you're found to be gay, you have to be thrown off a building and killed by the fall. This is a law. And these people hate you. You're standing for their rights or fighting for them because, well, you never stop to think who you're fighting for. If tomorrow you get them elected, they are going to kill you and you don't realize the game that you're up against. This is the result of the complete inversion of values and the thought phobia. You stop thinking. You're just swinging according to what the media played you. Oh, you have to stand for and demonstrate for Palestinian rights. Go ahead, no problem, please do. But recognize that those people hate you for what you stand for. And that was in that case, queer for Palestine. So I'm showing you how the inversion of values, if you flip one, it's eventually going to collide with something which is true. If you flip both, there will be a double collision, and the collision is so irrational that you are actively standing for someone who is going to kill you. There's a cartoon I had once seen, and where the kings and queens are it's represented like this. They are represented by axes, with a wood stick and metal cutting. And they are standing and looking at the trees who are doing a demonstration in favor of them, of the axes. So one explains to the other, I convinced them that we are for them because our handle is wooden. And this is the condition of the hacked humanity. Without thinking, you vote for things, you stand for things, you demonstrate for things which are fundamentally contrary to your existence and survival, and yet you do not realize it or you don't want to see it. You're lost in some kind of a fantasy of a belief system or pattern of doing what you are told is the right thing to do. So I've put that as an example of how strange it is. And the way the programming works, I have a Skype software sitting here. They added AI at some point, as everybody is adding AI. And when you open Skype, right at the top is AI giving you an example of a question you can ask. And now this is almost 2 years. It has the same example, and I'm going to tell you what it is. The default AI suggestion, which I'm seeing, is, I can try to generate a pledge for a secret society. Here is one example, and if you click on it, it generates a pledge that you dedicate your life for the flame, etc., etc. Pledge for a secret society. Why would somebody ask an AI to generate a pledge for a secret society? This is the most absurd, stupid, irrelevant, culturally even negative question to ask. If you wanted to have the AI being used, you would put examples of questions which would be relevant to you. And for the last 2 years, this default AI setting has not changed. So I'm just monitoring, I'm observing to see what games they play, how they try to hack me. And this is one of the things I've been observing. Now, I have no way of knowing if this is happening all over India or all over the world or certain states or certain individuals that they are targeting. I don't know what the game behind is because I have no way to ask a million other people, what is your default question that the AI offers you? I believe, though, that this would be the case for a mass in India. Why? Because they want to normalize the idea that creating a secret society or belonging to one and participating in it, and therefore keeping secrets from your parents, from your colleagues, and being part of a group that starts doing mischievous or dangerous things, breaking the law, etc., to gain benefits, is completely normal. So they are normalizing the weird and the perverse, but on a mass scale, either targeting geographical regions or perhaps in this case it could be the whole world, I don't know. But by normalizing it, when you get an offer, someone invites you, do you want to join our secret society? You don't ask, why are you doing such crazy things here? Why would I join a secret society when I'm in university for studying? You don't ask the question. When actually you join the secret society, the first 1 year, they make you stand like a dummy. You're not allowed to speak one word. You become a servant or a slave to the elites. And next year you become the elite and others become your slaves and servants. So it is so demeaning, dehumanizing that you would never accept it. Except what they do in all the Hollywood movies, they will show you images and visuals of this and make it seem like something good and interesting and attractive. So when now you are asked to do it, you say, oh yeah, I saw that in the movie. Oh, it's normal. I do. So what they will show in the Hollywood movie, these people, they kneel and the elites put their legs on top of their back and smoke. And these people have to stay as long as they are told, or they're ordered, go strip, run naked on the road, break a law, do something. And you do that for which you are then celebrated. Now you're so courageous, now you're so good, now you're worthy of joining our club, we are an elite. Now imagine if you were called by someone and told, hey, I'm going to ask you to break the law. I will not protect you. You will face the consequences. Go ahead and do it and I will praise you. Would you do? Never. But by putting it in this context, creating this fake illusion of a belief system and a participation in a club which will give you privileges or wealth or whatever access, and by normalizing it through cinema and every other social media programming, you say, yes, that's what you're making me do. Hey, great, let's have fun. Now you've called it fun. You see how the programming works. So the normalization of the weird and the perverse. And all this is intended to be a long-term strategic goal of hacking human beings by the interest of the totalitarian government. Now, I'm putting all this in the context so you understand the bigger game plan. And in the very initial, I've mentioned this before, but I'll just summarize this quickly for Eric's question. In the very initial process of participating in these secret societies, you have a ceremony to join them, and the whole ceremony has an occult significance meant to hook you and to put you into their system of control, not just occultly, but also to be able to blackmail you. So they ply you with alcohol and drugs, make you speak secrets, and make you do things by which they can blackmail you for the rest of your life, and step by step. So all this is, remember, part of an agenda today extended on a global level. It is happening in India. For those of you who are parents or those who have completed your studies, don't have illusions, it's happening on a mass scale already in many of the elite schools. And because of this programming, nobody questions whether it's right or wrong. I've put another link to RFK Jr. This is an exceptional person. There was no chance that he could have become president in the US, but by standing for president, it gave him a chance to put out his messaging to the public. The mainstream media tried to suppress him as much as possible because he was speaking truth after truth and openly, directly. Even things Trump dare not speak, he has spoken openly. And none of the media could ever tell him, oh, he's lying. With Trump, they would say, Trump claimed without evidence. Now, obviously, in the just debate that he just had with Kamala Harris, he said that many of the immigrants, they eat cats and dogs, which are pets in the US. Now, you can't be providing, here is evidence, I'm going to give you a report in the middle of a debate. So the media attacks him saying he claimed without evidence. Well, interestingly, on Twitter, you had a lot of people putting up the evidence, and particularly Elon Musk put up the evidence for this and justified so many things which Trump says. But Trump cannot get away with making a statement because they attack him saying he claimed without evidence. But with RFK Jr., interestingly, they never attacked him saying claimed without evidence. Because he has himself, he comes from a background and has all the data and evidence ready to give from his own experience also. But they don't even want to shine light on him. They don't want him to be known. But I put a link there which is very important. There are two links. One is somebody has compiled what they call red pill moments with RFK Jr. What are the red pill moments? If you remember the movie Matrix, when the hero Neo is going to be made to break out of the illusory world that he's living in, the programmed computer world with a hacked mind. His mentor offers him two pills. One is blue, one is red. And he says, if you take the blue pill, you go right back into your dream and go back to sleep. If you take the red pill, then you will wake up and then you cannot go back. And I will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And so red pill Simpson has been used in this sense that once you wake up to this knowledge or this information, you cannot go back to sleeping again. And part of the goal of this series on current affairs is precisely to attempt to make some degree of red pill if that's possible. So in this, so there's many red pill moments where he speaks about the pharma industry and how the State Department and the CIA works across the world, including how his family was members were killed and so on. But a lot of the pharma industry red pill moments are there. But a lot of it also has to do with totalitarian control. So that one link I've put separately where he says, and I'm quoting him exactly, he says, nobody in the history of the planet has ever complied their way out of totalitarian control. This we have to understand. If you comply when a control is imposed on you, you are hoping that, okay, with this they will withdraw the control. He says that never happens. And he says every power that the government takes from us, it will never relinquish voluntarily. They told us they wanted lockdowns for 2 weeks just to flatten the curve, just to help the hospitals. Then 20 months later, they still have us locked down. And even when they give up, when they stop the lockdowns and let us go back to normal, they are not relinquishing power. See, they've still kept the laws in place to lock you down. If you notice now, all the vaccines, including the so-called vaccine for HPV or for young girls, which they want to now to push, all these vaccines are being released under the emergency authorization. Where earlier a vaccine went through 5 to 8 years of testing. These vaccines have just been created. They've never been tested on human beings. They're using the same pattern of emergency use authorization, which was used for the emergency during COVID, now for all normal and any other vaccine. This should not have been allowed by any government. But once they've allowed emergency use authorization, they will never let go unless you wake up and demand, no, we will wait 5 years till you have tested it. And so, if you yield on a freedom, you're never going to get it back. Or if you get it back, it will be the same struggle that took place 100 years ago or 200 years ago, which your forefathers went through to give you this freedom that you just handed over and now you will never get it back, or you'll have to repeat the same struggle. You must understand how serious this is. And this is what Sri Aurobindo warned us about the one world government and exactly the same issues about how they would take away your liberties. And even when they give up, they will not stop the lockdowns. When they stop, they will not let you go back to normal. They are not relinquishing power. This is so they can do it to you again and again and again. They now have that power and they will never let it go until we make them let it go. So this was number one. He gives 3 statements. Second point, he says, every power they take from us, they will ultimately abuse to the maximum extent possible. If they have taken emergency use authorization power, well, they will abuse to the maximum extent possible. If they have taken away the freedom to lock you down for 2 weeks, just because there might be a pandemic, they will abuse that to the maximum. And what that means, you must understand. In Australia, they were literally throwing people into mobile jails for having violated a lockdown condition, even briefly. They would just grab you and put you in jail. And the jails were literally cell rooms isolating you totally. Solitary confinement. Food was not right, etc. They did it once, if they could do it once at that time, and there was no reason to do this. There was no reason to be so harsh. If someone violates, they say, hey, listen, just go back. And if it was genuine, people would, of course, accept. But why this harshness? They set a precedent. If you have done it once, they will do it again, and they will not let go, and they will abuse to the maximum. Number 3, nobody in the history of the planet has ever complied their way out of totalitarian control. This is where we are today. And this control is being squeezed upon us gradually. One of the great steps being taken, which was this year actually, and it was supposed to have happened in May, was the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty, where they defined what is called a pandemic emergency. And the WHO was getting all the countries to sign up for this, that when they decide that there's a pandemic emergency, all the countries would have to fall in line, align themselves to a common action which would be decided by the World Health Organization. Negotiations failed for various reasons, and now they have announced that the treaty is postponed to the next year, 2025. And so I looked up on YouTube, I said, pandemic treaty, WHO, problems. There was not one article Google would provide you which discussed the problems. And I know there are a lot of people who speak about problems. Google has completely censored all these links. I went through 16 pages looking for, I found nothing. All of them were pro pandemic emergency. And maybe around 16th page, I found some which were saying, yes, there are these conspiracy theories, but no, we are not going to take away your rights or your freedoms. Each nation will be sovereign. So I looked at those articles. I looked at the people who were in authority now telling you, no, we are not going to take away your rights. And I'm giving you a quote first. Lawrence Gostin interview. I'm quoting actually from what he says. In many nations and throughout social media, there is distrust of international institutions and a fundamental misunderstanding about international law built on state consent to be bound. You see, you are consenting to be bound, so what's your problem? No, you are not consenting. Your country consented. No, your country did not consent. An individual who was at that time in position of power consented on your behalf to put your entire country under consent of that international law. You see the game. But you consented. Remember, you were a democracy. You elected that person. So what's your problem? Why do you have distrust? Then he says, nationalism and populism have created a groundswell for my nation first. You see, that's why they're against Trump or Modi or Putin. But not against China, interestingly. Ask yourself why. Because China is very clearly China first. Very strongly. The entire communist party is China first. They will never compromise. And yet nowhere they are criticized, and they are not a democratic country. You will never find them criticized. No leader in China is ever criticized. Ask yourself why. And you'll find amazing, surprising answers. Think about it. Fascinating, isn't it? And yet Modi, who was democratically elected, is criticized for looking at India's interests, or Trump or others. My nation first. So he's putting my nation first in quotes. And then he says, the problem is that the world would be less safe if all the nations put themselves first. Now you see, there's a truth to it. If each one said me first but against you, that would be a problem. But if you said me first and then I collaborate with you, that's not a problem at all. So they've taken a truth, taken it out of context, and then they highlight this point. We need mutual solitary and shared obligations. See, shared obligation is you are obliged because I am obliged, and we are bound now. No freedom. And yet mutual solidarity. You see, all these words are truth words, but warped now by inversion of values and made the very opposite. And then he says, no one is safe unless everyone is safe. Again, there's a ring of truth somewhere behind, of course. Unless everyone is safe, you can say, we are not fully safe. When everyone is safe, we will say, yes, we are now finally safe. When everyone is free, we will say, now we are free as a humanity. It's on that level. But what did you do now? You inverted the values so that you are not safe unless you comply and I comply, and we are all bound under compliance by a consent which we gave under compulsion, and now we will be safe. You remember what they did at that time during the COVID, where they actually said that if you are not, that thing stuck into you, then you are going to spread it to others. So in order to protect your children and grandchildren, you should get it, which was the most ridiculous argument. You see, and the game played is always this: even if one person is not given that, everyone is in danger. So therefore, everyone should get it. That was the argument, and an imposition. I know people in Pondicherry. One of our workers who was hired, he was running away, and the government officials chased him, caught him, held him down by force, and forced him to get it. And he was crying. And he came back saying he was getting severe pain. His health was never the same after that. What is this? This is the most horrible kind of authoritarian state. And this was happening all over the world, not just in India. Nowhere the media ever spoke up for these people who were being pushed against their will. It was in the social media. There were people sharing videos, and all of them were scrubbed at that point by Twitter. After Elon Musk has taken over Twitter, these things are more easily found, but they were all removed. This is a glimpse of the authoritarian state that we are heading for, which is imminent a few years down. It's not going to happen 50 years from now. It's not even going to happen 10 years from now. The World Economic Forum declared agenda is 2030, 5 years from now. 5 years from now, if they have it in place, fully operational, with this degree of control, imagine what happens next year or the year after. So that's why this importance that I'm giving to these discussions. If it was a speculation, oh yes, we will attain to a transformation, a supramental transformation of the body. Yes, you have to believe Sri Aurobindo said it, the mother said it, maybe they even attained to some degree in their body. But even Sri Aurobindo said 300 years, okay, not in my lifetime. I can believe, I need not, it doesn't matter. And it would be acceptable to you. That's your choice. There are others who will say, no, but for me, this is what I'm born for. I'm going to dedicate my life to it. Irrespective of whether I achieve the supramentalization of the body or not, at least I will take it 10 steps forward and make it conscious of the divine presence or whatever. You set yourself a direction. It's not something which is happening 300 years from now. It's not something happening even 50 years from now. It's going to happen right now. In the next year or two. It's already happening. And that's why this urgency of this discussion. I give you another quotation. This is from the US Health and Human Services Secretary, Xavier Becerra, again about this whole thing. With this agreement, we take steps to hold countries accountable. You see the game. And strengthen measures to stop outbreaks before they threaten Americans and our security. In other words, when there is a threat of an outbreak, we will hold countries accountable for living up to the demand of the thing they have signed away, the freedom they have signed away willingly. Remember, by your consent, you signed away your freedom. So what's your problem? You're still sovereign. You've willingly become a servant. You see, you've willingly given up your freedom. So you've taken a truth. You still are autonomous, warped it. You're no more autonomous actually, but you have the illusion of being sovereign state. So I've given these two quotations. I've not bothered to put links, it's not important. But just to tell you that this is happening, the WHO pandemic treaty is in process of negotiation. Countries are under pressure to sign up for it, and it's one of many steps already happening. I give one more example of in the US elections. Liz Cheney, who was part of the Republican Party, has an actual quotation going back 4 years. Liz Cheney, who is daughter of the famous Cheney, who was part of the 9/11 operation and the attack in Afghanistan and Iraq, etc. Dick Cheney. That same Dick Cheney, who actually was on record saying that we need a major event to justify entering the Middle East. Daughter of Liz Cheney in the Republican Party, quotes, and this is on the Twitter feed, Kamala Harris is a radical liberal who would raise taxes, take away guns and health insurance, and explode the size and power of the federal government. She wants to recreate America in the image of what's happening on the streets of Portland and Seattle. We won't give her the chance. This same woman now announces that her father and she are voting for Kamala Harris because Trump is a danger. Interesting. Think about what that means. And again, there was a cartoon in one of these Twitter feeds where they said, so the sheep have voted wolf as their leader. And the wolf says, I will eat you up. And one sheep tells another, I voted for him because I hate his rival. You see the mentality? You don't have to like Trump. But you vote for somebody who will do everything that you're against. And quite openly, you can see how vociferously she's against. Because you hate the other person so much, you don't like the person. You're not talking of policies. That you're going to go with somebody whose policies are against everything you believe in, but you think you like the person more than that one. There's another link, I don't know if I put it, probably I did not, but I wanted to, where the Pope made this announcement. Vote for the least bad candidate. He's making an announcement for to the American people and saying, vote for the least bad candidate. Think about this. The whole focus is on the personality of the candidate. So Trump can be presented as this, nasty, old. She is black. She is woman, so she is nicer. That's the programming. What about policy? You are not voting for somebody because you like them. You have to vote for them because they will do what you want for your country. That should be the reference. And nobody talks about this in the media. The whole focus is, do you like this? Do you like that? Who do you like better? Or if you don't like both, then vote for the least disliked. And what would be the consequences of the vote? They're doing exactly the opposite of what you believe and want for, and yet you vote for them. How do you explain this? Either you have completely lost your values, you have lost your balance, or there is an inversion of values by which you are hypnotized, or you're a liar. And perhaps Liz Cheney was lying all the time. She said whatever was suitable at that moment. I don't know. And it's not important. But I'm showing you the contradictions in the statements and the behavior. But if this be true, that she actually believes this and is conscious, then all the while that she was or still is in the Republican Party, she was controlled opposition. And this would explain why both parties always did exactly the same thing when it came to real issues. They fought only when it came to trivial issues. And you see this everywhere, all over the world. You know what is controlled opposition. We see this in India also. They take turns ruling, blame each other, swap. And we, the ordinary people, are left helpless watching this drama and being conned again and again and again. And this is the game that will be played in the name of democracy. And again I say, democracy as an ideal has been inverted in its values. It is not a real democracy anymore. So this is the nature of the inversion of values, and particularly they stand on words which have some truth, and they present it in a way that it goes in the very opposite direction. So I'm sorry, I had intended to take up some of the questions, but this is broadly the topic I wanted to cover. I may make some comments also on the list which I have put up. Let me see. Yes, so last time I had mentioned, time before last, the movie Michael Collins, and Eric had sent the link for this movie on tubeitv.com, where it was available for free. When I just looked at the link, it was not available for free in India, but maybe if you put a VPN and watch it from a different country, it might be free. I don't know. I also put up a documentary on BlackRock because I mentioned it. For those who may not know what it is, it will be a helpful link. These are all on Twitter. A documentary on the Illuminati and the history of the Illuminati. And there were elements which I didn't know also there. Ronald Bernard, I've put several. About world leaders, yes, I've put a few links there. One of which was shared by Eric, that will be very helpful. Tulsi Gabbard, she speaks of what is the choice in front of you. And you'll see there, she's not talking about personality. She's not saying, do you like this person or that person? She's looking at the policies that they are projecting. And this is the policy, this would be the consequence. That is the policy, that's the consequence. She is the only sane voice you can see in American public politics originally in the Democrat Party, and then she had to leave because they could not stand her. But I've also given as a contrast, and it's useful for you to understand how things work. Quentin Tarantino, he's a film director, a very famous one, and one of the most famous scenes, if you recall, is in a movie which he has, which shot him into spotlight, and also this Salma Hayek became a overnight sensation in that scene where she's a vampire queen and she does a dance with a snake on her shoulders. That scene is hypnotic, and I want to give this as an example of how the scene itself has infused in it satanic energy. All of them, including Quentin Tarantino and her, were part of a satanic practice cabal, and they were drawing on that power and the hypnotic power they had. And I remember reading in some of the comments, when that scene would appear on the cinema screen, the entire hall would go completely silent and everyone would be in a state of hypnosis till the scene passed. And it's not by chance that she plays the role there of a vampire queen. But so this Quentin Tarantino is in an interview with Bill Maher. He's a talk show host, famous talk show host, and he defends Kamala Harris. And I want you to watch that if you're interested, to see the way the thinking goes. And the only thing he says is we have to win. It doesn't matter what is true or what is false. It doesn't matter the consequences. Our party has to win, and that's all he says. But the coarseness and crudeness with which he puts this, you will see, is representative of that whole declining humanity. These are the people also creating the movies for programming you. And there are links of Yuval Harari. There are a few links on totalitarian control. There's a woman who reads out an agenda. There's a definition of many of the terms used. What is communism? What is fascism, etc. I think you'll find those interesting. And then there's a whole section on targeting of children, where children have been made performers, sexual performers. And this is happening in the big cities, in New York. And you have the big newspapers praising those children. What a sensation. 10-year-old boy is sexually dancing in front of grown men. And they praise this in some of the biggest newspapers. I don't know if it was New York Times or Washington Post, but some of these, an equivalent big name, I don't want to commit to what the name was, praising this as the new normal. You see, this is the way the future of humanity is being shaped, the future of your youth. I also put a few links on medical issues. Some of it relates to what we discussed, and particularly if you have listened to RFK Jr. And the last links are about Rahul Gandhi, because this I want to close with. It's very serious, and that's why I'm taking time on this. It's extremely serious. We are actually being led, and this is part of the toolkit agenda on India, to literally push India to fragmentation and partition. So Rahul Gandhi goes to the United States and makes a completely false claim that what we are fighting for is for the right of Sikhs to wear turbans and the kada, which are sacred symbols in the Sikh religion, in India. As if ever in the history of India this was denied of them. Even I think under British rule it was not done. It was only under Islamic rule that they were denied, and certainly not in free India. And Sikhs have always been some of the most respected, some of the most strong representatives for national interest and protecting national interest. And that very strength was attempted to be hijacked by Indira Gandhi when she made an agreement with a religious leader at that time of promising them a breakaway Punjab in return for votes. And that came back to haunt her. She was finally killed by her own Sikh guards because she betrayed that promise and so on. But this is the game played by politicians. They will even promise to cut the country in order to get the votes. And this is exactly what Rahul Gandhi is now doing in the United States. He said that the Sikhs have to fear being in India because they will not be allowed to wear turbans, etc. And immediately the main Khalistani representative in Canada came out with saying, so now our action is justified, and the entire operation, the toolkit operation to cut off Punjab, is in place. As you can see, Kejriwal has just been released by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court didn't say that the arrest was wrong. Here's again the duplicity of the Supreme Court. They said the arrest was legitimate, but because the hearings are going to take a long time, we release the people on bail. And everybody who was part of that criminal enterprise of looting the country, who had been arrested, has been let free now on bail, because it's going to take time to go through the hearings, because there is too much evidence. Instead of cleaning up your system of judicial system, you're running down your judicial system, making it inefficient, and then using that to justify freeing of criminals. And they are all focusing now on Punjab and Haryana elections. The same thing is happening in Jammu and Kashmir, where both parties, Congress has tied up with the National Conference. They've declared that they want to reinstate Article 370, put a separate flag for Jammu and Kashmir, etc. So again, the attempt to cut off. You see the sudden violence in Manipur, similar pattern in West Bengal, Kerala, and in part in Tamil Nadu, just beginning. But it's set for the same direction. All of these are looking at their immediate protection interests. And very likely in Jammu and Kashmir, the BJP will not win with any significant majority. They don't even expect to. That's why they're not even going to fight in all the seats. And they know it. So they will fight only in seats where they might get a chance to win. But otherwise, if they fight everywhere, then the media will say, see, they lost. And that will be shown as a loss for the BJP in the eyes of Indian people. So it's actually a very different game in Jammu and Kashmir. But what will happen when those groups come into power, they will use that as a platform to push for the division of India. So we're heading for very difficult times, very dangerous times. The operation to divide India, to topple the regime, bring about regime change, etc., is fully on. It's imminent. The threat is imminent. The dangers are imminent. The one world government is imminent. All this is to simply tell you, be conscious, wake up, do what you need to do to wake others. It's one of the reasons why I've put so many links. If you find any of these links useful for yourself, and if you think it might help others to wake up, use them. Look for others, other links which you can also share. And I think we'll just take quickly the very next question, which is of Arya.
Namaste, he writes, Sraddhalu. EU said that most news outlets were controlled by the cabal. Can you suggest some channels that we do give a twisted view of the world affairs?
Yes.
And there's another related comment
RPX.
that we have from RPX. Sir, is playing video games a part of programming?
Yes. So I'll complete with these two questions, although that makes the discussion a bit longish. So for Arya's question, we have already given a few links before, and I had suggested several. Do look back at those earlier discussions. But at the moment, one of the best that you will find where there is free and open discussion is X, or what was Twitter before. Because of Elon Musk, you have a platform where people can freely share information, share now full-length videos, but also criticize each other. So if there is information that is factually wrong, someone will point out, and if the person has already proved that they are reliable, then it becomes like what they call a community comment. It is attached to the false information or puts it in context if there's partial error also. Now this is a good example of a healthy free speech zone. Of course, you can't go abusing and all those things, but you can have healthy discussions. So in fact, it's one of the most interesting platforms today. Go on Twitter and you can do searches there with keywords. If you just type keywords, you'll get many links, many views of videos as well as comments of people. But be careful, when you do a first search, once the results come, you will find there's a button that allows you for an advanced search, which you don't see the first time. So having made a first search, you have an advanced search. There you can do far more selectively precise searches with keywords, with dates, etc. And use this as a tool, and it is one of the most powerful platforms where you will get insightful observations of people and information also. Sometimes semi-abusive, but someone placing an opinion has no value. Someone giving an analysis has far greater value. And you will find, again, with the voting system, those get pushed to the top. So if you sort naturally by the higher votes, you will get more interesting content. So this is the one platform I will add, even though I had mentioned it before. And then there are others I've mentioned before. Take a look at those. To RPX's question about playing video games as part of the programming, yes, in fact, music, cinema, video games used to hypnotize, isn't it? That's the whole point. So suddenly my video, is the video on?
Yes, it's working, but I don't know on the YouTube.
Okay. So anything which can be used to hypnotize you will be used to hypnotize you. Remember the point which JFK Jr. made. You give them this much power, they will use it against you. Video games are one of the most powerful because, unlike a movie where you identify psychologically, but you cannot change the outcome of the movie, in a video game you identify with the player and you change the outcome. So you get to do things as required by the game for that player. And so you identify and absorb completely the role that you play. And so it is a very powerful tool of programming. If, for example, the entire video game is about shooting the bad guys. Who are the bad guys? That depends on the game. How you kill them depends on the game. But all the time what you're doing is killing. And there's a point where you don't even realize how crude, coarse, and even inhumanly perverse it is to roll a machine gun and kill 10 people in a shot. I remember when first my mother saw some of these video games, this is way back 20-30 years ago, and her comment was, "Oh my God, they're killing human beings like cockroaches." I laughed. I thought it was a funny thing because I had already been programmed to consider the game normal. Oh, it's just a game, remember? It's only later when I could disengage from the hypnosis of the role play that I realized, oh my God, what does this mean? Each person that's dying has an entire family, has got children who are going to miss their father or mother or whatever it is. What about the consequences in society? You've been made insensitive to this. And then this phrase has been introduced again through cinema, where you say, you killed it. This is now a phrase introduced by cinema. And nobody would say it before. But they introduced it through cinema, and that's the power again of the hypnotic media. They teach you all the swear words, but then they teach you killed it. Meaning what? That you were successful in achieving something. And that now is said by you killed it, which is the very opposite. You killed somebody. You killed a good thing. Instead of saying you were successful at something. So these are all the inversions of values, examples of inversions. And in the video game, you have a complete inversion of values in most of the popular games. And what do I mean by popular? Among the available games. Now they used to be right at the beginning, because I've seen how the game industry started. You had beautiful games. You had scenic, idealistic games. Very quickly those were washed out and everything was reduced to cabal agendas. Not just shoot 'em up, but even others. Where you are stealing, where you're a criminal. One of the most popular games, popular because it's pushed by the media, is called where you're racing a car, you're a thief and you steal cars. That's the nature of the game. And then there are more complex layers where you go and now kill policemen, you fight policemen, and then you go into Las Vegas and do all kinds of other things. But you are a criminal doing all criminal activities. And just the name slips my mind. GTA, Grand Theft Auto. Thank you, Rampal. Thank you, Om and Riyadh. Grand Theft Auto. Now what is interesting is, you're stealing and you're a thief. And upon that, by fighting policemen, killing policemen, you get more points and you become successful. You see the inversion of values. And the Grand Theft Auto then becomes more and more complex, takes you through more and more perverse degrees depending on many add-ons that you can do. And when you ask a child, what is the game you're playing, what's your favorite game, they will not say Grand Theft Auto, because then the parents panic. They'll say GTA. I'm playing GTA. Ah, yes, so nice. What is GTA? Doesn't matter. Go on, play. But if you said theft of auto, parents would say, what is this nasty game you're playing? So yes, be very clear about this. This is a very powerful programming tool to change your behavior because you're actually doing it. This is one of the most amazing things. It's more powerful than cinema, more powerful than music, where again you're just hearing words. But they are all methods of hypnosis to warp the youth into inverting their values, where the good becomes bad and the bad becomes good. And finally, this is reflected in all of the current Hollywood cinema in the last 15 years particularly. But it started around 2004, where Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all these superheroes now become dark. And then in the stories from the children's, what used to be in children's stories in Europe, Grimm's fairy tales, the evil witch is the good one and Snow White is the bad one, etc. The complete inversion of values. So you are building a world where the good becomes bad, bad becomes good, and because it has been presented to you through these various hypnotic media, when you actually face that in reality, you say, ah yes, that's how it is, that's normal, but I've seen it on cinema, I've got so used to it, it's nothing new. World is reflecting what I saw in cinema since my childhood, right? Look at almost every movie, every video game, the scenery is dark, heavy, coarse, twilight. You have vampires, you have blood drinkers, bloodsuckers, killers, people on a whim killing, and the killing is done with very deep, clear, crunchy sound. And people snorting cocaine and drinking alcohol at every moment. And if you've seen any movie recently, you know how to snort cocaine, although you've never done it. You know exactly how it's done. And you'll see the camera zooms closely, the person prepares the line, snorts it, the camera comes, and then they smile in relief, because earlier they were tense. Having taken cocaine, now they smile in relief. The programming deep inside, subliminally, subconsciously, is that, I've identified with it, this is what I will do when I feel miserable. Or I hope that I will get that big happy smile when I do that. And when my friends say, oh, come on, join us for cocaine, you say, okay. And they'll show this in movie again. A guy who's never done cocaine, he's embarrassed, he's ashamed. And the others mock him. Oh, you are a virgin, you have never done cocaine. Come with us now. Now you're a man. Now that you've done this, you are truly a man. That's the programming. When actually it's the very opposite. You were a man, you just did something which made you animal. You lost your senses. You lost your independence of thought. You just dulled and damaged your brain. You've gone subhuman in that moment of alcohol or whatever it is. You've inverted values. Now this is great and the good is bad, the bad is good. So this was the theme I set for today as the inversion of values as part of the Cabal agenda. And I again highlight this key point which Ronald Bernard also made from the point you wake up. Always, and he says this, we are the channels, we are the vehicles for these forces. If we choose to become vehicles for the light, it will override all the negative, the dark will be pushed out. Make a conscious choice, help wake up others, at least make them conscious so that they can make a choice and not just be carried by the state of hypnosis in which we tend to live. And particularly and most importantly, for all those of us who have a spiritual life, who are open to Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, understand first that they knew this well before. They knew where humanity was heading for. Sri Aurobindo even said, even if I see that the world is going into the most dark, the most difficult condition, and even if the darkness gets darker than the dark, I will not lose hope because I can see the light which is beyond. I'm paraphrasing. But one of the other statements which he makes, which I want to read out to you because this is so important, and we will conclude with this, is this statement which someone just sent me. Sri Aurobindo says, My life has been a battle from its early years and is still a battle. The fact that I wage it now from a room upstairs and by spiritual means as well as others that are external makes no difference. In that sense, none of us have had to fight and struggle the way he had to. None of us had to go through the extremes of danger, including physical danger to life, the way he had to, including, as I mentioned last time, he was even about to be killed, put in jail and killed, as other freedom fighters were, hung. He went through all those dangers without fear because the goal for which he stood, the ideal for which he stood, was greater and more important. This should be our reference. Fortunately, none of us has to fight that kind of a battle, but know that there are others who are fighting for you so that we can sit and talk and be free and live freely. And this includes the soldiers on the borders who are ready to die so that your country is protected. Be grateful to them. Be grateful to the sacrifices of your ancestors who fought for the freedom that you have today. And do not make the mistake of giving away that freedom on a whim because you didn't earn it, you didn't struggle for it, you don't know its value. Know the value of their struggle. Know their sacrifices, and then you will not give it up so easily. Cling to the freedom that is given to humanity. Stand for what is true, stand for what is right. Again, I'm presenting to you a choice you have to make. There may be situations in life where you have to compromise, where you're not willing to lose certain comforts. It's a choice you will make, but at least be conscious that you're making a choice. And when you make a choice that you know is a compromise, ask for help, ask for guidance. Otherwise, stand for what is right and ask for the help. 3 things you need. Wisdom to know what is the right thing to do. Don't get carried away by the deception in the media. Strength to stand by what is right. And the third, which is the most difficult perhaps in this context, is the love. The love that even when you recognize somebody is doing wrong, you will say, yes, they're doing wrong, and yet I don't lose my poise of love and replace it by hate. I may not love them, at the very least I will be neutral. But I will not allow the hate to come in. I will deal with this as a play of forces. I will do what is right at each moment. But hold your stance. As much as you can, stand by your values. And if more and more of us can do this consciously, it will have a ripple effect everywhere. The one thing the cabal fears, and remember their numbers are very small. Ronald Bernard says the top level controls are about 8,000 people of the whole world. Second level control are maybe larger. Third level control are mostly people who are victims themselves and have been trapped into doing whatever it is that they are doing. But actual numbers are really small, who are agents, instruments, conscious of the Asuric forces. The one thing they fear is that you wake up, or that you choose to become consciously aligned to the light. Know that the greatest strength is within you, and the backing of the divine is far more powerful than the power of the Asura. Because remember, fundamentally everything underlying is the divine, including the Asura itself. Underlying is the divine power that is warped, misused, isn't it? And so when it comes to the crunch, and enough of us can stand as instruments consciously for the light and choose to stand for the light, the Asura loses all force and cannot be effective at all. It is we who give it power by, one, fear, and second, by abandoning the authority and the power, by saying, what can I do, therefore I will not do. Take the power, hold the wealth, hold the strength, with wisdom and love, stand firm. And they can do nothing when we do that. This is the challenge for us, and we will each one make a difference. Don't worry about how many are there. Less or more doesn't matter. You be what you can be. Others will follow, inevitably as a consequence, perhaps by a ripple effect. Or not, it doesn't matter. You will have the satisfaction that you stood for what is right. And again, I will remind you, in the past, we have all been in situations where we had to fight and die for an ideal. We have all done it. It's not something new. But this time you're asked to fight and you don't need to die for it. That's the difference that the civilizational growth has given to you because of those who died before. And perhaps you died before also to get you humanity to this point of freedom. Do not give up this freedom. Do not allow it to regress. Stand firm. You're not required to die this time, but you're required to stand firm for what is right. We have died before. Do not forget that. Remember, we have done it in the past. Others have done it in the past. It's not difficult to stand for what is right because you have done it. And you've done it in far worse situations. Stand for what is right and ask for the help, ask for the guidance, because the Divine Mother is here with you. She will give you the wisdom, she will give you the strength, she will give you the deeper love that will allow you to stand for and help others also to wake up. Let us all join in aspiration for this effort and pray for and work for the liberation of humanity and the overthrow of the cabal and asuric interests and the attempt at the one world, what shall we say, the one world control, totalitarian government that is being made by those interests, and the destruction of civilization which Sri Aurobindo speaks of, that they want to do. Against all this, we have the light, we have the strength, and the help and protection, most of all, of the Divine Mother when we open to the light. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Victory to the Divine Mother.